All right, today we're diving into a 2,000-year-old intellectual mystery. Seriously, we're going to follow some of history's absolute sharpest minds as they go head-to-head, and it's all because of one single, tiny word that just seems extra.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Why all the fuss? Well, because for these scholars, the text was perfect. Every single word had a purpose. So if a word looked redundant, it wasn't a typo. No way. It was a clue. A clue hiding some deeper truth, just waiting for someone to piece it all together.
So, here's the case that kicks this whole thing off. Picture this. A kosher bird gets a fatal injury. Maybe a predator got to it. But before it dies from the wound, it's slaughtered correctly, according to all the rules. The question is, does touching this bird make you ritually impure? Now, to solve this, we first have to get our key terms straight.
First up, we've got tarifa. Now, this isn't just any old injured animal. This is one with a specific fatal wound. And the crucial point here is that even if it's slaughtered perfectly, its fate was already sealed by that injury. It was going to die no matter what.
Next, there's Nevila. This one's a bit more straightforward. It's a kosher animal that just died on its own. It's a carcass. And because it wasn't ritually slaughtered, you can't eat it, and it definitely, 100% transmits ritual impurity.
And that brings us to ritual impurity. Okay, this is super important. We are not talking about hygiene here. This has nothing to do with germs or being physically dirty. It's a spiritual status that, back in the day, would have stopped you from entering sacred places like the temple. And coming into contact with a nevila, a carcass, is one of the main ways you'd get into this state.
Okay, so let's just pause and lock this in. A slaughtered terefa, totally kosher, you can eat it. A nevela, died on its own, not kosher, and makes you ritually impure. Our entire detective story hinges on this difference. So the big question is, when it comes to impurity, does our slaughtered terefa bird act like a nevela?
Okay, time to meet our lead detective, a scholar named Rabbi Yehuda. He is convinced he's found a smoking gun right there in the book of Leviticus. And you guessed it, it's one of those extra words we were talking about.
And here it is. This is the verse that starts everything. It says that eating in the vela, a carcass, or a terefa makes you impure. For Rabbi Yehuda, that second word, terefa, just jumps off the page and demands an explanation.
So here's how Rabbi Yehuda's logic works. It's pretty brilliant. He's thinking, wait a second, if the verse is talking about a terefa that died from its wounds, well, that's just a carcass. That's a nevila. The word would be totally unnecessary. Therefore, he concludes, the word must be there to teach us about a completely different scenario, a terefa that was ritually slaughtered before it had the chance to die from its injuries. And boom, just like that, the first theory is born. According to Rabbi Yehuda's logic, this verse proves that even a slaughtered terefa bird makes you ritually impure. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
And this is where things get really interesting. Another scholar, Rav Zevachim, comes along. He finds Rabbi Yehuda's logic so compelling that he decides to stress test it. Let's see if it holds up when we apply it somewhere else. And this is where the plot really thickens.
Rav Zevachim points to this verse about forbidden animal fats. Now, look at the structure. It's almost a carbon copy of the first one, right? It mentions the fat of a nevila and the fat of a terefa. So he runs the same play. He applies the exact same logic here. He says, okay, if the word terefa is mentioned, it must be talking about a slaughtered animal. And if you follow that logic all the way down the rabbit hole, well, it seems to actually support Rabbi Yehuda's theory about impurity.
But then, the bombshell, Rav Zevachim pulls out this other verse, sort of an ace up his sleeve. And it's one that all the sages agree on. It explicitly says a slaughtered terefa animal is ritually pure. All of a sudden, Rabbi Yehuda's beautiful logic, when you apply it to that fat verse, leads to a conclusion that is just flat out wrong. It creates a massive contradiction.
So, Rabbi Yehuda's deduction is now in big trouble. His logic seems to work for the bird verse, but it creates this huge paradox with the fat verse. The investigation is blown wide open, and now the sages have to go back and re-examine all the evidence. This becomes the new central question. If that word terefa in the fat verse isn't there to teach us about impurity, then what on earth is its purpose? Why is it there? The whole debate shifts to finding the true meaning of that single word in this new context.
So one idea gets floated. Since the term terefa can only apply to kosher species in the first place, maybe, the word is just there to clarify that this whole rule is only for kosher animals and not, say, a pig or something.
But hang on a second, the counterargument comes back immediately. If that's the word's purpose in the fat verse, why wouldn't it be the exact same reason in the bird verse? You see the problem? That explanation would totally erase Rabbi Yehuda's original proof, leaving him with no case at all.
So the debate rages on. The sage Abbe jumps in with a really complex, nuanced theory. He suggests that maybe someone would mistakenly think a treifa is like a non-kosher animal, since you can't eat either one in certain circumstances. So the verse needs that word treifa to make it crystal clear that its fat, unlike a non-kosher animal's, is ritually pure. It's a subtle argument for sure, but the other sages still aren't totally convinced.
The puzzle seems totally unsolvable. The arguments are just getting more and more complicated. And then a scholar named Rava steps forward, and with a single, absolutely brilliant insight, he resolves the entire contradiction. Rava's genius is that he reframes the whole problem. He basically says, hey everyone, what if we're all looking at this the wrong way? What if these two verses aren't even about the same thing? He argues they aren't in conflict because they're teaching two completely separate lessons.
Here's his solution, and it is so elegant. Rava explains the fat verse is teaching a legal principle about stacking prohibitions. Think of it like this. Eating forbidden fat from a carcass, an avila, means you've committed two violations at once, one for eating from a carcass and one for eating forbidden fat. Rava argues that the extra word terefa is there just to teach us that this very same double violation applies to it too. And suddenly everything just clicks into place. The word terefa in the fat verse isn't about purity at all. It's about legal liability. This gives the word its own unique job, it completely resolves the contradiction, and it leaves Rabbi Yehuda's original argument about the bird standing strong.
And that is the case of the tainted bird. It's a masterclass in logic, showing how one little word can spark an intellectual investigation that lasts for generations. It leaves us with a pretty fascinating question, doesn't it? What other profound ideas are hiding out there, not in the words themselves, but in the tiny spaces between them? Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.